Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different for sermon time. A few weeks ago, myself and four Nelson boys went to Urban Cross for work camp, and so today we're going to be learning a little bit about what that is like. So I guess what we're going to be doing is we'll kind of go through what we did there. Each night we had a worship service. So I will be condensing, the theme this year was grace, so I'll be condensing those messages into one. And after that, we'll be watching a video kind of about what we did while we were at camp. And we will also be sharing how we experienced God during the week at camp. And during that time, we'll also offer the great opportunity for you as well. You can think about this, how you experienced God this week. So keep that in mind. So I guess we'll get started here. Yes, hello, Gloria. Glad you could make it. So, Urban Cross, the cross in Urban Cross stands for Christians Reaching Out in Service in St. Paul. So that's what we were doing while we were there. We were helping people in need for various reasons, doing projects, gardening, painting, light construction, all kinds of little things that, for one reason or another, economically or maybe their physical disabilities, they're not able to do that anymore. So each year, Urban Cross has a theme. This year, the theme is on our shirts, which is also our work uniforms for the week, is grace flowing like a river. That comes from the scripture that Lauren read to us, John chapter 1, verse 16. From God's abundant love, we all receive grace, one blessing after another. Like I said, this is the work uniform for the week. Unfortunately, they are gracious enough to wash these every day after we get done working. They do get well used. So initially, when we get to camp begins on Sunday. All the kids from the different churches are broken into different groups. Some families are glad not to have to work with their siblings. So they are working with other kids from other churches during the week. This year, I was also in charge of what's called a TIM leader, a team in ministry, in charge of a group of 4 kids, and the kids' ages range from 12 to 18. So we're going to go ahead and meet our teams. So we are charged the first day with coming up with some type of name for our team. Initially, we had, there were 7 different teams. We had colors. We had to come up with a name, so some of them you'll see their color and the theme. My team is the Mean Green Turtle team. I don't know if you can see, but that is a turtle breaking the sound barrier there. You guys can go ahead and come up. We also need to develop some type of team motto, something unique to our team chant, something to help us identify our team. So you guys can help me with my team motto, which was, gotta go fast, turtle fast. Oh, my team members were Matthew, Helena, Leontine, who was a foreign exchange student from France, who was staying with my sister. My sister lives by Glenwood, and so I had nieces and nephews also attending this camp. And Tanushri Buck, if you remember Ian Buck, this is his adopted sister, was on my team, and the proud leader of the team myself. Next, I'll give the microphone to Trenton, tell you about his team.
My team was the Dream Ducks. We didn't have a chant, but this is what we did.
Yeah, help them out, guys. This is the Dream Duck glasses, I guess? Goggles.
All right. We were the Dream Ducks. My team was Becca, all the way to the left, me, Ellie's in the middle, Lena is in yellow, and Diane is our group leader.
All right. I think you might want to use those Dream Duck goggles to intimidate your opponents in wrestling. Just charge out in the mat wearing those Dream Duck glasses. Next, we have Mason. I'd like to introduce your team. Help him out.
We were the Rocks. We will rock you. That was kind of our
Alright.
chant. That's what we had.
Also, I should mention the team should have kind of something to do with water or grace flowing like a river. So
That one underneath the sign right there, she was the one that chanted. I just kind of stood there.
yeah,
Um,
she was much more enthusiastic than you are right now, Mason.
So, all the way to the right, we got Savannah, and then we had Lauren, and then that's me in the green, and then that's Logan, and then our awesome team leader is Karen House.
My sister.
Yeah.
Next, we don't have any representatives from this group here, but we have Delta 5. They have the nice gang symbol stance. 5 was their signature mark. You can see Delta, River Delta. That's Emily, Austin, David, Olivia, and John was their team leader. Here we have the drip drops. Jeremy, Galen, Tom, my brother-in-law, Emily, and Mateo. Their theme was drip, drop, drippity drop. Pretty impressive. And we have Purple Rain. That was Aaron, and Pastor Pam was our team leader. Jared, Amber, and Stella. And their motto was, housework giving you a pain, pick up the phone, call Purple Rain.
And my group was the Well Wishers, and we didn't know what to do, so we just said we'd do an interpretive dance.
We got to help them with the interpretive dance.
I'm not helping.
All right, and then from left to right, it's Anna, and then Mariana, and me, and then our group leader, Keith, and then it's Darius. Right, that's how you say it. Yeah. And then, yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys. You get a break for a little bit. So, when we look at camp, what's our typical day like? We wake up, we actually spend the night at a different church than the church that actually puts together the camp. Works out pretty nice because there's a lot of things going on. Gives them an opportunity to set up meals and so forth at one church where rambunctious kids can do what they need to in the evening and sleep at a different location. So we stay at Grace Lutheran Church, which is a few blocks from Mounds Park United Methodist. In the morning, we drive over to Mounds Park United Methodist Church. We eat breakfast, and then they have food set up on tables. Each person goes through, picks out whatever they want to eat for the day, packs their own lunch. We go and put it in a cooler that'll be taken to the work site with us. That's when we receive our work assignments for the day, where we'll be going, what we'll be doing. And then we head out to the tool shed. The garage behind the church becomes the tool shed where they have all the tools, where they will pass out, assign you for whatever projects you're going to be doing that day. And then you can head to the work sites. There's a lot of coordination and effort to go through and go out to the work sites ahead of time, weeks ahead of time to determine, what we're actually going to be doing. A lot of work goes into this for coordination of meals, so forth. You see on the back of all the shirts, there's a list of all the sponsors. A lot of people involved. Area restaurants contribute food. Just a lot of support for this camp. Each day we'll work until 3 o'clock, and then we come back. We'll return the tools to the tool shed, and then we head to the YMCA for much needed showers. Come back to Mounds Park United Methodist for supper, where we can turn in our dirty shirts, and they will be laundered for us, and we will receive them back for the next day. And then each evening we have worship, and then we will return after worship back to Grace Lutheran Church for the night. So like I said, I'm going to be condensing, the theme this year was grace, and 4 different evenings we had worship service about grace. These are some of the individuals that helped out with that. On the far left there you have Jonathan Coward, who is a youth minister. And then you have Reverend Jeremiah Ladine, who's in Minneapolis. He's actually forming a new church, which I understand kind of actually do services from a street corner. What's that? Oh, okay, yeah.
Actually, Lee, who I was talking about, is actually the intern at Jeremiah's church and will be preaching with us.
Okay, do they have a physical location for they do? Okay. Okay. And we also have Josh Corbett, who played guitar, led us for music. And that's also Jeremiah again with him. So I'm going to be stealing information from these individuals to go through the message on grace here today. So if you fire up your computer machine, type in grace into the Google. For the definition, you will find in the top 2. Ooh, this is great opportunity here. We like to do participation at work camp during the messages, so I get to ask everybody to stand up if you're able. And if you look at the first definition of grace is simple elegance or refinement of movement. So if you look up graceful in images, you find a lot of images of ballerinas. So I need everyone right now to give me their best ballerina pose. Be careful, don't injure your neighbors. Don Rakoski. Oh my goodness. Well, good thing we're not focusing on being graceful today. Okay, in the second definition, it is the free and unmerited favor of God as manifested in the salvation of sinners and the bestowal of blessings. You can go ahead and be seated. Thank you for your participation. This is about the point in the service where I'm starting to doze off, so I gotta. Just kidding, Lauren, I don't doze off. So, as we start to look at, now that we're defining grace, I'm going to be using grace. Some people, if we talk about sharing grace with others, some people would say, well, that's not possible. That's something only God can give. Well, that may be true, but in the sense that I'm using it, you can do unmerited kindness or things for other people that they don't really deserve. So that's, when we talk about sharing grace or giving grace to others, that's kind of the sense I'm talking about. So first we were looking at digging for grace. Well, where is grace? When we're talking about grace, what is it? Where is it? Where do you find it? Kind of the example that Jeremiah gave us. It's all around us. His example was going through the checkout line. We don't see it. He had all kinds of items. Stacking all of his stuff up. Worried about getting it through the checkout. All this cool stuff he's buying, and went to pay, and then he looked up and he realized there's actually another person there. A lot of times we get so busy in our lives we don't notice other things around us. And we miss out on grace. Grace is all around us. As Josh said, you look in the mirror, you can see the possibility of grace. Each one of us is a special individual, possible of doing things for others. Wonderful things happen to us all the time. Maybe we don't deserve them. So it's all around us. We also talked about enduring grace. This is a segment I found particularly interesting. Anybody here familiar with the USS Dorchester? Anybody heard of the 4 chaplains? Yes? Oh, Dylan, you're familiar with this. Amazing. You were paying attention at camp. That's great. 4 immortal chaplains, or the 4 chaplains. Anybody familiar with them? Well, the USS Dorchester during World War II was a troop transport carrying troops across the Atlantic to Greenland. And on board the transport was these 4 chaplains. We had a Catholic priest, a rabbi, a Reformed minister, and a Methodist minister. And on the German subs were known to be in this territory, so it wasn't necessarily a surprise. The troops were ordered to sleep with their life jackets on, but a lot of times down in the bottom of the ship it's hot, or these things are uncomfortable. Who wants to sleep with a life vest on? So they didn't. But the Dorchester was torpedoed by a German sub on February 3rd, south of Greenland. This is 1943 at 12:55 a.m. And unfortunately, the ship was torpedoed, but the torpedo also knocked out the power on the ship, so it was completely black. Ship was sinking, so there's a lot of panic, and these 4 chaplains kind of spread out on the ship, offering prayers and encouragement. Prayers for the dying and also encouragement for the people that could live. And when some of the people coming from the bottom of the ship didn't have life vests, so they were passing out life vests, and the supply ran out. What these 4 individuals did was they actually took off their life vest to the next person and said, "Take mine." So that's kind of an example of somebody receiving something that's not earned. And looking at that in the aspect of enduring grace, if you're somebody who receives one of those life jackets and happens to survive this disaster, you live with the fact of, what did I do to earn this? Probably didn't do anything. So that's kind of the aspect of, or very similar to, God through Jesus gives us something that we haven't earned, and we live with that. We have to accept it. Not a bad thing, but maybe we feel guilty because we don't deserve it. And as the last image of these 4 gentlemen who participated in a great interfaith act of grace was, they were arms linked together as the ship sank. They were saying prayers together, and were never seen again. This morning we heard about Jonah and the whale. Jonah's kind of another example of enduring grace. God told the backstory, of course, to what Lauren read this morning, was God had told Jonah to go to Nineveh because these people were evil. They were going to be punished. They needed to change their ways. So Jonah went the opposite direction, as we know. He tried to flee on a ship. It was a great storm. It was determined that he was the cause of the storm. So he was thrown overboard, swallowed by the whale, and lived in the whale for 3 days, and then was spit up on shore and told to go to Nineveh again. So he goes to Nineveh, goes through the streets, tells everybody to change their ways, or they're going to be punished. Lo and behold, they change their ways, and the king orders people to repent of what they're doing, change their ways, so they do. And Jonah is upset with this. He wants God, since the people have changed their ways, relents of his punishment and doesn't do anything to the people to punish them. Jonah's upset by this. I knew this is what was going to happen. That's why I didn't want to go in the first place. You're too gracious. You're going to forgive these people. And he has a hard time enduring that fact that God actually does that. So the last we see of Jonah is he's kind of basically pouting outside of the city, waiting for God to punish these people. And God says, you should be happy. I've forgiven these people. So that's kind of something that's difficult for us to endure in our lives, is that God forgives people that we don't necessarily like to forgive. That's part of enduring grace. So just kind of to sum up enduring grace, there's two parts to that. First was that we maybe haven't earned grace and feel that we may not deserve it, or that other people have earned grace that we do not feel necessarily deserve it. We also talked about receiving grace and also sharing or giving grace. So, receiving grace, people may do kind things for us. God gives us many blessings that we haven't earned. And we also can share grace with others by doing things for them, maybe that for no reason they haven't earned. We talked about, one of our lunch devotions was how you can increase your worth to God. It was an interesting question that I hadn't really thought of before, so I kind of started to answer this question. Well, let's see these things you could do, and then wait a minute, this is a trick question, isn't it? You can't really do anything to increase your worth to God. And the second part of that is, what can you do to decrease your worth to God? Which is, you think about that, well, okay, maybe you can't do anything to decrease your worth to God. We look at the parables of lost souls that Jesus gives us. A couple weeks ago, Nancy Carpenter talked about, I believe she stated her little bit of dismay over the story of the prodigal son. And it's a tough story to go along with. You know, we have the good son that does everything right for his father, and the second son that wants his inheritance ahead of time, goes off, squanders all the money, living a wild lifestyle, and ends up at the bottom and decides that he needs to return home. And the father rejoices, is happy to see him when he comes in, and there's a celebration. You know, the good son is probably, come on, what is this? I've been here the whole time. I'm doing everything that's right. This isn't fair. But if we look at the worth of the two individuals, they both have worth to God. We also look at the parable of the lost sheep. The 100 sheep, one wanders off, and there's also the 99 that are there who doesn't go looking for the lost sheep. The lost sheep has just as much worth as the other 99 sheep, and there's celebration when the lost sheep comes home. There's also the story of the lost coin. The woman has 10 silver coins, loses one, and lights a lamp, searches the whole house to find the one lost coin. That lost coin is just as valuable as the other coins. This is somewhat of the part of enduring grace that, you know, maybe there's people that God gives grace to that we don't think deserve it. Interestingly enough, I think I may have found a bit of a loophole in this thing of worth for God when I was thinking about these stories. A couple of the parables, we look at sheep. Now, it so happens we have somebody here that knows a lot about sheep. Lee, if you're looking at sheep, what dictates the worth of that sheep when you bring it to market? Oh boy. Livestock in general, when we bring these to market, what indicates the worth of the animal? The weight does. And we look at coins. Say we have a bunch of pennies. Is it possible to have a penny that's worth more than 1 cent? I think it is. There you go. Old. If they're old, they're rare. Wheat had pennies worth more than a cent. So, I think I may have found a loophole. If we are to increase our worth to God, we grow fat and old. Probably not sound theology, but maybe an attainable goal for some of us. So if we can't really decrease our worth to God, then what's the point of living a good life? I mean, Vegas next weekend, Cheryl? No? Too hot, I see. Well, the thing is, I think we all have this little thing, that nagging thing called a conscience. And it turns out that when we share grace with others, it feels pretty good. Sometimes. Other times it's a bit of a challenge to us. The week we had Urban Cross was also the same week that we had the horrific shootings in Charleston. Tragic and senseless act. And a couple days after the shooting took place, I was, during one of our little downtimes, I was reading about, found an article about the shootings, and they're actually setting bail for the shooter. And, it said that representatives from the families had appeared at this trial with statements. So I was thinking, boy, what choice words would I tell this guy, after such a horrific event. And I continued to read that they, expressed their anger, but said that they had forgiven him, and they asked God to forgive him. Holy cow. That's a tough one. I think I have a lot of growing to do to catch up with these people. In this instance, I think I would probably prefer to be more like Jonah, sitting and pouting, waiting for God to bestow punishment on this individual. So that was definitely a good lesson on grace for me. But other times, sharing grace or giving grace to others is a lot of fun, such as Urban Cross, where we get to go out in the community, help people, and you know what? It feels pretty good. It's not that I don't do the camp because I don't have other things to do. I can't find ways to burn up my vacation time or anything like that. I do it because it's fun, it's enjoyable. It's just part of enjoying and sharing grace with others. Mason Nelson. Do you remember 5 years ago when we went on your first work camp? And you remember, Mom, what was that like? Horrible. What way? He did not want to go to work camp. He also pouted for at least an hour in the van after he got to work camp. So this week an article came out from Urban Cross. It was posted on the website of the United Methodists. I believe Successful Ministries is what it was called. So I was reading through this article and come across a quote from one Mason Nelson. And talking about Urban Cross says, quote, "It's loads of fun. There are no words for it. Just fun. And you feel good doing it." Pretty interesting stuff, Mason. So that's a bit of a summary of work camp, and in closing the message sermon, I ask you to join me in a word of prayer. Dear God, we thank you for your abundant grace and many blessings. We ask that you help us to look up. May we recognize all that you have done for us and opportunities to help others. Though we may not be graceful people, help us to be grace-filled people. Amen. Okay, and now we will look at, we got a video of kind of a quick video of some photos from camp.
I look around and I see your face. I will find. I'm running free from the signs in my head, longing for the body, blood, and the bread. I search myself for something within. Where does it all begin? I have 2 feet on the ground. I stop and I look all around me. Oh, I wonder what's in store for me. I know you will open your door to me. All I need to do is to stop and listen. Feel the strength coming to me. Just listen to my heart. With your love we can never be torn apart. I have 2 feet on the ground. I stop and I look all around me. Oh, I wonder what's in store for me. I know you will open the door to me. Feel the strength from my heart. With you I'll never fall apart. You are my rock, you are my salvation, yeah, yeah. I have 2 feet on the ground. I stop and I look all around me. Oh, I wonder what's in store for me. I know you will open your door to me, yeah, yeah. Open your door. Open your door. Open your door. Open your door. Open your door.
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to ask the campers back up, and we will share our God experiences for the week. I'll do it too, so don't be afraid. Yep.
I experienced God through my team leader because she was really awesome, and we had 2 people that didn't work very well. They didn't have a very strong work ethic, and 1 person who was allergic to flowers. We did a lot of gardening and pulling up shrubs, and our team leader kind of kept a happy note, and she was always trying to look for where people would do their best.
I saw God in my team group. I was in a group with 3 girls, and neither one of them were afraid to get their hands dirty and get to work. So that was really nice.
I saw God in my team leader also because we had a really picky eater in our group, and the one day we had a sponsor get us chicken, and she didn't like chicken, so she had an apple because she was on like a special diet where she like only had the healthy foods. So she just had an apple and peanut butter for her lunch, and then so the next day our group leader brought apples for everybody in our group so we could all eat together and nobody would be left out. Your turn.
You guys can sit. I have a mic. Sit down if you want to. Yeah, you can sit down. So how we experience God during the week. This one has been a tough challenge for me. Just because I feel that sometimes God's will, or people say things God desires that are misused or, yeah, misguided perhaps. So I want to be sure that I have experienced, this is a God experience and not just a great experience. So at camp, I haven't really felt it was a God experience at camp. So I haven't shared at camp. But in thinking about it, it's like, well, if I were to look at my life and say, where has God positively, undeniably given me an experience, it's tough to say that, scientifically as an engineer. How do you refute that? I can't prove it. So maybe I need to own up to the fact that a lot of these great experiences are God experiences. So there was one moment in my mind that sticks out that I will share with you. We went to older lady's house. The person that gave me the project warned me ahead of time that this individual lady, very nice lady in her 70s, had some things she wanted done that she was just a little overwhelmed with by getting lumber ahead of time to fix her fence. She has a husband who is in a wheelchair. He has dementia and ataxia, some type of muscle disorder that confines him to a wheelchair. So she's caring for him, and she's also has a daughter recently that has had an abdominal surgery, and it's taking a couple months to heal. So she's taking care of two individuals and just falling behind on all this work and is overwhelmed. So we went to the work site, and part of the job we had to pull some weeds, and she had a nice deck that was aged behind the house. So we needed to scrub in preparation for staining it, and then part of the thing that she was a little overwhelmed with preparing ahead of time was fixing this fence that had some deteriorated boards in it, and the gate that was sagging because of deteriorated boards. But really wanted to get this fence fixed, so I had somebody come get lumber for it, and had the kids working on scrubbing this deck. So I went over and was working on this gate that was sagging because of this rotten board, and putting some screws in and looking at it like, oh, how am I going to fix this thing? Cut a chunk of board here. And I remember hearing a bell, which is kind of unique because living in a home with a grandfather clock, I'm kind of oblivious to chimes, bells, kind of things. But then I remembered, okay, Jeremiah told me I need to look up. If look up and see what's going on. So I look up and I see the bell. It's a little ornamental bell hanging in a little wire frame with a pendant blowing it in the wind. Side note on this, later I was thinking about what was unique about this bell. How many of you have seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life? Every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. It was that kind of bell, a little ding-a-ling-ling, ding-a-ling, little tiny one. So I look over and I look over to see what was causing the noise. I see this little bell and a little piece of paper, hanging on it, blowing it in the wind. And just beyond that, I see this team of 4 youth who are diligently, somewhat of a miracle. I don't know if you've worked with young kids, but they were all diligently working, scrubbing this deck. Somewhat of a miracle in itself. So then I look back at the little bell, and I see it's hanging on this nice wire heart frame, and it just occurred to me that what a great thing it was that these kids were sharing God's love with this lady. So it turned out to be one of the best work sites that we'd been to, just due to the fact of the circumstances, and the lady was very, very grateful for what we had done there. So just great experience, great God experience. So at this point, I warned you ahead of time that we would open up the floor to anybody to share how they experienced God this week. It doesn't need to be an elaborate story like I just gave right here. You heard the kids. Kids are brave enough to do it, so this is where I stand up here awkwardly in silence until someone comes forward. Okay. Thank you, Pam.
All right, so everybody, if you don't know, I'm an RN at the hospital, and there's a lot of different parts in our world of what can happen, and something devastating happened, and in my mind, I just went, I need to do this, and I went and got something that would help save a person. So in my mind, I wouldn't have remembered. I'm like, how did I know that? Why did I know that? And every day, I know that God's with me when I go to work. And if you've ever read things about RNs who we're harder on ourselves a lot of times, but we try our best every day to make our patients' lives better. So that was mine, and it helped.
Thank you.
I got to experience God this week through all of the people that were doing the car wash at Willie's. All of the Country Day workers that have banded together to help make Country Day become a viable ministry that they had considered closing at the beginning of this summer and are now banded together, and even their kids and everything. We washed and we made almost $600 on Friday night for Country Day. So it was amazing how Country Day completely transformed and turned around and is now going to remain open. So
Anyone else?
Thursday afternoon, I didn't really have much to do, so I thought maybe I could go up at the church and do something because I knew Liz and Lauren were painting and all this kind of stuff. So I came up and I said, well, I can't do anything very hard, but what can I do? And they said, well, how about if you fold bulletins? So I went in and folded bulletins, and I was really amazed at those two and all the work that they have done. It's definitely a God thing.
Anybody else? All right, well, I'll end the dramatic silence then. Guess I'll just leave you with one of my favorite lines from camp. Is that as you go forth this week, remember that you may be the only Jesus that somebody encounters this week. So keep that in mind.